I'm Amanda Leitner, and welcome to Rochester Rising, where we amplify the stories of Rochester entrepreneurs. Welcome to episode 138 of the podcast today. So today, I got to sit down and talk with local innovator Dustin Walker, who is operating in the clean energy space. So Dustin is the solo entrepreneur behind Revision2. And with this business, he aims to focus on clean energy, clean living, and emerging industry opportunities. So his first product through Revision2 is a tubular solar panel. It's in prototype stage. It's aerodynamic, it's football shaped, it's 16 feet long, has 148 solar panels, and connects directly to utility poles so it can free up farmland instead of being placed on the farmland. So we talk about a lot on the podcast today. This was kind of a newer space for me, so it was fun. Don't do too many clean tech chats. Today on the podcast, we talk about residential, commercial, and utility scale solar panel use in Minnesota. We talk about how becoming a parent and getting a challenge from his 7-year-old son really launched Dustin's journey into this clean energy space. We talk about his goals with the business at this point to source manufacturing and supply chain and gain traction with local utility companies and the conversations that he's had so far in that realm. We also chat about resources Dustin's used in the community that have been useful and his goals for the next year. All right, so now on to the podcast with Dustin Walker of Revision2. All right, so we are here with Dustin Walker on the podcast today, talking about something completely different that I never talk about too much, and that's agriculture and solar panels. So it'll be exciting. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So I thought to start, like we were talking about before we started recording, I'm not too familiar with different energy sources, and I'm guessing a lot of other people aren't as well. They're listening. So if you just wanted to give like a overview of kind of, first of all, where are you likely to see solar panels in Minnesota? Is it typically like, I'm just thinking, I have a cousin who's very into green things in Pennsylvania, and he has solar panels on his roof, and then the energy company gives him like a rebate for it. So do you see them more in individual homes, or do you see them out in like large land masses here?
So the nice thing about living in Minnesota is that the local and state governments really get behind the clean energy initiative. So what we see is a lot of utility scale and commercial scale installations, and those can even be on rooftops, but most of the time we will see them in fields, open fields, subprime farmland, things like that. So you're going to see a lot of larger installations in Minnesota. There's a lot of rooftop going on out there. There's a company called Solar Connection here in town that just they're installing every single day. So you're going to see it on a residential, a commercial, and a utility scale. All three of those in large amounts in the state of Minnesota. Most of all, though, you're going to see a lot of utility scale, big fields, big solar fields.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that's probably where I've come across them the most, especially when you're going like west out towards, I'm totally blanking on the county, but around Blooming Prairie and around that area, Concord. So yeah, and a lot of farmlands here. So what opportunity do you see in the solar panel market with what you're doing? So where was there a gap?
So what Revision2 created was it's a solar panel that's sort of targeted directly at the utilities. Currently, when you look at how utilities are investing in solar electricity, they're investing in wind energy a lot. They're not investing in solar electricity very much. And it's because the solar generation is not economical for them at the moment. Third-party developers are getting the biggest tax incentives for developing their utility scale projects and then getting subscriptions through their customers and then funneling that through the utility. So the customers still stay with the utility, but the utility is not investing in the solar project itself. So there's a lot of community solar and stuff like that going on. Mm-hmm. However, what I saw was farmland being taken up and in an agricultural state. That's sort of a hard thing to look at, especially when you think about 20, 30, 40 years down the road, you have to look at the future, and you have to look at the population growth and where we're going as a society. We got to grow food. And even subprime farmland is going to be difficult to give up, and land acquisition is going to be the hardest thing for the solar industry to see. So they're going to suffer growth, but at the same time, they're going to suffer some PR in the future as well, because they're going to be taking up food plots. So what we designed was an aerodynamic, football-shaped profile that connects directly to a utility pole.
Very cool. Yeah, I agree. You see a lot of wind turbines, I think, because it's very windy here, coming from an area that wasn't very windy. It's windy here, but yeah, the solar energy as well, like you said, that might be the bottleneck, just like the economics of it, and then the taking up of large amounts of land. So you've kind of come in with a solution to both of those things. So do you want to talk, so Revision2, it's the name of the company and it's the product, is that right? Or
so Revision2 is the name of the company. However, we're a lot more than a solar panel. That's the first project because that's the first opportunity that we saw. So we're going to go for that. I consider it to be an easy win just because it was a pretty low-hanging fruit that we saw. So that I saw, right? I'm the only employee, but
I know how that goes.
So yeah, that was the main opportunity that I saw. So that's what we're doing right now. I mean, there's a lot of things when you look at energy storage and when you look at food waste and things like that moving forward that can be taken care of, that the industries can be shifted. We can take a look at the infrastructure of those industries and help it turn a corner to help serve the future for the next generation. When you just look at what the next generation is going to be doing, and just look at millennials, right? When you look at millennials, and we're trying to turn a corner. I'm a millennial. I used to be ashamed of that fact, but I'm not anymore. But when you look at what we're doing, we're turning that corner to help, because we were never thought of before. I mean, we were, but we were never thought of before. So then we don't want to do that to the next generation. So,
yeah, absolutely. I think we've gone from like a throwaway economy in whatever, the 40s and 50s, or maybe even earlier to, really, we were talking about a few weeks ago about how even like companies now want to have like a social or like a clean mission, and that's really what people, in our generation look for a lot. And it's beyond just like a job, you want to have some impact on society. So you're envisioning the Revision2 kind of mission to be more towards like clean energy and sustainable living. Is that accurate, or just kind of feeling it out as it goes and see where the opportunities lie?
I'd say you're pretty accurate on both.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Clean energy, clean living, things like that. But really, I mean, whatever opportunities come up, is an industry changer, right? I mean, we're not going to be a company changer. We're going to be an industry changer, and it's a big dream.
I say lofty goals. That's good. That's good.
But I think at the end of it, if you don't dream big, you're not going to make it big.
Oh yeah, if you don't try, you never know if it's possible, and then you sit on all these things, and you're like, when I had that opportunity, I should have taken advantage of it, and when you don't, then you never know.
Right.
So
there's a fellow named Russ Brown. Right? I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a motivational speaker. It's total cheese factory, but he says the wealthiest place on the planet is the graveyard.
Yeah, I believe that. So, I think a lot of innovation entrepreneurship is fueled by a lot of passion. And just from talking to you this brief bit, it seems like you're really passionate about delivering this product. So what's kind of the story behind that, and what kind of got you to this point to want to do these kind of initiatives?
Becoming a parent was a big part of it. I mean, 8 years ago, I became a proud dad, and I've had 2 more children since then, of course. And thankfully, my wife has stuck with me through all of them. But and as soon as I had my first kid, I knew I needed to do something. I just didn't know what to do until, one day my oldest son, Holden, he finally told me what I was going to do. And this is a conversation me and him were having, and I don't know if you have time for this story, but I'll tell it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
These are the best parts.
We were just sitting at the dinner table, and he he talks about everything under the sun. And the kid, for 8 years old, is far more in tune to the world than I ever dreamed to be in at his age. And he just said to me one day, Dad, the world is getting hotter. And, you know, our teachers in school, they were saying it's because of all the natural gas, or it's because of all the greenhouse gases. I don't know what those are. Can you tell me what those are? And we talked about what they were. And he said, well, is there any way to generate electricity without using greenhouse gases? And I explained a few things. And he said, well, I guess if you were to use one, which one would you like to use, Dad? And I said, solar. And I explained why. And I said, you know what, though? And I gave him my 2 cents on that. I said, we're doing it wrong. And here's why we're doing it wrong. And I said, we're taking up too much space. We're eating up farmland, and it's just taking up, it's going to inhibit growth. And we're not going to be able to actually support the electric need of the future. So what I would do, and I explained the whole utility pole project and turning the power grid into the power plant, and Holden, in his true fashion, after I went off on this tangent for probably 10 or 15 minutes, he looks right at me and says, so is that what you're going to do then? You know, you're sort of met with a couple choices at that point, and
right.
so but you only get to pick one as a dad or as a mom or anybody. So the choice is, I'm going to go try this and see if it works. Simple as that. So, and trying to make it a better place for my kids.
Well, good for you, and good for him for like challenging you to do that. Because I knew when we were talking, you said you were challenged to do this. So was that who challenged you, your son?
That's who challenged me.
That's
my
amazing.
7-year-old son at the time. Yeah,
that's amazing. You know, it's crazy. I talk with a lot of people, and a lot of people say, you know, kids are what push them into entrepreneurship. You know, you hear a bit of both. You hear the ones that say, you know, oh, it wasn't just time because I have, you know, kids and we need to, you know, support them. But you also hear the other part where it's like, you know, we had kids and that fueled me to like want to pursue something bigger. So that seems to be a huge thing of a lot of entrepreneurs. You know, I've heard a lot of people who quit their job and, you know, the next week they find out they're having a kid, and it's just kind of a crazy, you know, I don't know how they go together, but they do somehow.
The stakes just get that much higher. It's that simple. You know?
I think so. And I think a big part of entrepreneurship is, like you were saying, pursuing that mission to do something bigger and better. So, yeah, that's fantastic. And I'm sure he is. So does he still ask you a lot about the progress and what you're doing?
Yeah, we talk about it all the time. And then, of course, he's always just like, okay, well, you're going to have this big shop then, right, Dad? And so I'm going to get to work in it. And I can invent all sorts of stuff. And so he has all these crazy ideas. And the funnest part about that is we get to have these little thought experiments. And he wants to make this wild and crazy thing. And I gotta bring him back down to earth. But then at the same time say, well, here's what we can do to make that happen, though. And so we'll go on for hours and hours about that stuff.
It's a lot of fun. You got a little engineer on your hands.
You know, and he said he wants to be an engineer.
That's awesome.
I thought an engineer drove trains when I was his age. So
I didn't even know what they were when I was 8 or even 22, you know, to be honest with you. So yeah, that's amazing. That's so great. And, you know, you never know. I mean, maybe he'll go on to, you know, lead this into, you know, more industries and, you know, avenues that you never thought about. So
one could only hope.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So let's go back to your first product, the solar panel that goes on utility poles. So, you know, right now, kind of what stage in development is that at? Where are you with the project?
So we built a prototype.
Okay.
And that prototype does all the magical things that the math said it would. So that's a good thing. What that prototype consists of, again, is it's a football-shaped profile, and so that means it's a tubular shape, basically, and just think football, but make that football 16 feet long. And there are 148 solar cells on it.
Okay.
And that's 2 panels on one face. Now, there's a lot of explaining for why there's 2 panels on one face. To put it simply, when the sun shines, it goes across the earth from west to east, or east to west, okay? And if you have a flat panel, you only need to have one power source taking away from that. So one junction box, essentially taking all that power and delivering it to the grid. If you have a curved panel, anywhere where the sun's not shining is going to hurt the performance of where the sun is shining. So you need a secondary panel there to take care of the shaded portion, so that way the shaded portion is not hurting the portion that the sun is hitting. So basically what you have is a morning side of the panel and an afternoon side of the panel, and then you get, hopefully, the math sort of suggests we get a little extra insolation time, which is more time for the sun to actually hit that panel just because of the curvature of it. So it sort of deals with the curvature of the earth and the curvature of the panel all at the same time.
And normal solar panels are about 16 feet, or?
So normal solar panel is about a 4x8 sheet of plywood.
Okay, so no.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is, it's totally different. And so we're in the stage, so we got a prototype made, but we're looking, right now we're sourcing out manufacturing and supply chain and all that fun business stuff that gets a little bit boring and drudgy sometimes. But, and then, while doing that, trying to gain interest from local utilities. We've been lucky enough to work with RPU, and been lucky enough to work with People's Energy Co-op, and then I just had a meeting with the mayor.
That's awesome.
Last week, and she gave me some good contacts, and she's an excellent mayor, by the way. I think she's doing wonderful things for this city, and she wants to move forward on a lot of stuff. So hopefully we got a couple pilot programs going along with this. And once we get some funding under our belt, we'll make all that happen. Yeah,
it's always about the funding. So it's like you said, it's just you with this organization. So I did want to ask you about how you're connecting with utility companies. So have you had experience working with them before, or is this all kind of new? And how are you learning how to connect with them or managing that?
Yeah, I'm learning as I go.
We all are.
Yeah, the first 15 years of my career life was spent working in motorcycle shops and
very cool,
making prototype pieces for accessory dealers. So I just made things. That's all I did. I worked on motorcycles and I painted stuff. I work in a body shop now. It's not my area of expertise at all. But once you get enough Google searches under your belt, you can you can hang with the experts anyways. As long as you let them know that you're a Google expert, not an expert, they seem to be pretty accepting of the knowledge that you can bring in. But then, cold calls help a lot. But just learning as I go. That's it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've gotten a lot of great connections so far, because you just started this in October, right? And you're already having conversations.
Started in July.
July.
July 4th, actually, 2018.
Okay. So a little bit over a year.
Yeah.
So well, congrats.
Thank you.
I'm getting to, the prototyping that in a year is a lot of work. And then having these conversations is a great progress.
I got to hand it to the Rochester SBA. That was the first place I went. As soon as I decided I was going to do something like this, the Small Business Association of Rochester. There's a fellow there named Rick Andrelli, and he is second to none when it comes to giving good information and helping me out. And he will spend forever with me, and I can ask him all the stupid questions that I want, and he'll answer them. And so, I got to give it to those guys. Those guys are pretty good.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think a lot of the times we forget to say kind of who helped us, and I've heard Rick's name come up a lot. So they're doing great things in the community and helping a lot of people in like a lot of different industries, it seems like. So that's a great thing. What was I going to ask you here? Oh, yeah. So going back to kind of talking with utility companies, and we talked about this in the beginning, but what kind of energy sources do utility companies typically use, like in this area, and then how much of it is clean energy, or how do you kind of start that conversation with them?
So that's basically, I just tell them I've got a really dumb idea and I'd like to share it with them. Of course, there is that conversation of where are you getting most of your electricity from? How are you investing in green electricity? And most of the time it is through third-party developers. A lot of hydroelectric is going on. We get a lot of electricity from Pierre, South Dakota, believe it or not. And that goes over to Xcel Energy. And, of course, natural gas. And we're shutting down the last of our coal-fired plants in Minnesota, so that's good news.
Yes.
But, it's all third-party developers. I think Xcel Manufacturing owns one solar installment. I think that's because it was going out of business or something. But don't quote me on any of that. That's just hearsay. But, I mean, at the end of it, the utilities don't get the same tax benefits that third-party developers do. So that for the next 2 years, they're not going to invest. They're looking at ways to invest. But so that's a good conversation with me and the utilities usually, because it's an exciting new idea, and they like it because they can invest in property that they already own. So they don't have to go out and search for land. They don't have to go acquire land, and then they don't have to pay lease agreements for the next 30 years because they already own the current critical infrastructure that is the utility poles. It's the distribution grid. So any generator can invest in this and then work it through their distributor and turn the power grid into the power plant, essentially, sort of a decentralized system. It doesn't totally take up all the consumption of America. Looking at if pie in the sky, we're looking at 10 billion kilowatts annually that we could generate if this really took off and really penetrated the market. But that's 1/38 of the consumption of America. So, we still need, the traditional solar farms, we still need the wind farms, and we still need other green electricity sources in order to actually get to 100% renewable energy that we want to get to. But it's a nice complement to the system, and the beauty of it is it sort of shifts that utility industry into thinking about where can we save space.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting too. Like you said that these third-party developers get the tax benefits and not the large utility company, but I think that keeps it more innovative too, because you can create things faster than the utility company can. Resources might be limited, but if there's a partnership going there, then it seems that it would probably work out for everybody. It seems like a similar model in like large tech industries, where they'll partner with a smaller startup to either acquire that technology or kind of help develop it, because the smaller things can move faster than the larger things. So
yeah, and you're correct. It keeps competition alive too.
Yeah.
If utilities would have been able to invest to the sky for all the green electricity, you would have never seen, the solar industry or even the wind industry boom like it did. It would have just been the utilities owning it, and that would have been done. So it would have been just another thing that got handled by somebody else. And
yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to ask you about, resources in the community, and it sounded like, the SBA was extremely helpful, but yeah, even as far as prototyping, it sounds like you probably built that yourself. Is that correct?
Yes, I built that myself. Glues and screws in my garage.
Awesome. So yeah, you're the prototype connoisseur, it seems like, trying to build, learning by doing and learning by building, which is awesome. Yeah, I come from a family who did that as well. So very familiar with that. So my last question for you, second to last. So if you look out, so I hate when people ask you 5 years from now, where do you want to be? But if you just say 2 months, what do you want to accomplish? What are your next steps that you're trying to get through to make this more of a reality?
So the biggest thing I'm looking at is building more of a team in 2 months, either gaining a founder or gaining a partner. And then beyond that, we're really going to start hitting the funding track hard. We're going to start looking at angels and things like that to help us finish development, so that we can go get a purchase order. And if we get a purchase order, then we can start working with banks and things, and then we start cash flowing the business. And I just took you through a year, but that's this time next year. I'd really like to be looking at purchase orders and possibly installing systems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And it sounds like you know how to access those tools to get you there, which is one of the hardest parts, is understanding what resources are in the community that you can use, like the business mentors, networks, and things like that. So that's great. So my final question is, if someone's listening who wants to join your team or learn more about you, how do they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't have a website, because I'm not smart enough to build one. And I could probably build one on a website builder, but I just honestly, I don't want to, I just don't want to do that before I don't want to do it without it being right. So I'd rather be able to have a little bit of funding behind me and pay a developer and actually have somebody do it right for me, so that way we can have a good website. So I don't have a website, but they can call me. They can call me. I'll put my cell phone number right out there. 605-645-2396. If someone was willing to join or was interested in talking about something like this, I'd be happy to have a conversation with them.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time today and educating me about solar panels and energy and agriculture. A very kind of foreign topic for me, but thanks so much for the conversation.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much to Dustin for joining us today and sharing his story. And if you listen in and are interested in joining his team or connecting, be sure to give him a call. So if you liked this story, be sure to check us out on Apple Music or wherever else you consume your podcast content and subscribe. You can also check out other stories of Rochester entrepreneurship that we have on our website at rochesterrising.org. So we also put out articles, videos, and podcasts, of course, talking about entrepreneurship here in Minnesota. So check it out. If you have an entrepreneur that you know in the community in Rochester, Minnesota, that would be a great person to interview on the podcast. We're always looking for new people to sit down and chat with. So if you have a suggestion, send us an email at rochesterrising@gmail.com. And otherwise, you can find us on Facebook and on Twitter under the handle at Rochester Rising, on Instagram with the handle at RochesterRising_MN. And we are also on YouTube. And we put all our podcasts on YouTube as well in kind of a video format. So if that's more of your style of listening, check us out there. So also tomorrow is our next communication session focused on mental health for entrepreneurs. So if you're feeling particularly lonely, isolated, having feelings of anxiety or depression coming up as a result of your entrepreneurial endeavors or otherwise, consider joining us. So this is meant to be just a low-key, confidential space to talk about these issues facing entrepreneurs with others going through similar things in their life right now. So the next communication session will be tomorrow, Thursday, July 25th at 5:30 p.m. at Collider Co-working above Blue Duck. So you can find more information about this event in our show notes, and it's also in our Facebook event page and on Eventbrite. So we hope to see you there tomorrow. That's a wrap for our podcast today. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening in with us today to learn more about local innovation. So if you like this podcast, be sure to subscribe so that you never miss a story of entrepreneurship and innovation coming out of Rochester, Minnesota. We'll be back again next Wednesday with a brand new episode.